from sleeping in gyms to dominating an entire sport. This is why fighters are scared of Amanda Nunes. The truth is simple. Amanda Nunes is the most terrifying fighter in women's MMA. She was never a hype train, but she had the power to stop a train if it came her way. Like many of the greats, Amanda came from humble beginnings. Far away from her current home in Florida, Nunes was born in Bahia, Brazil. Amanda was born to fight, and she's been a student of the art of combat since she could walk. At age 5, she was already learning capoeira. And at age 7, she attended karate for the first time. She was a very hyperactive kid, which is why her school teachers encouraged her to train. They had no idea they were creating an absolute monster. Her next passion was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which she excelled at from the very beginning. At age 17, Amanda moved in with her sister in the city of Salvador, where she could train in a bigger gym. However, her sister's apartment was very far away from the gym, and Nunes was too broke to afford her own place. So Nunes slept on the gym mats in exchange for helping out with cleaning duties. That's right, some champions have cleaned their way to success, and the Lioness is no different. Nunes has an insanely diverse fighting background, but it's probably fair to say that Jiu-Jitsu is the main building block in her arsenal. Amanda started competing in her late teens and was very successful in grappling. In 2009, at the age of 21, she won the gold medal at the World Jiu-Jitsu Championship. A few years later, she became the world champion of the North American Grappling Association. You had definitely heard of Amanda's rock-hard punches, but did you know about her insane grappling background? Of course, the sport of mixed martial arts was calling her name, and Nunes had to oblige. She was a BJJ champion and was already showing signs of becoming a strong boxer as well. Money was also an issue because Jiu-Jitsu wasn't making her enough to survive. Finally, that was what pushed Amanda to leave the mat and try her luck with MMA. Believe it or not, when Amanda's professional MMA career started back in 2008, it started with a loss. However, an impressive winning streak soon saw her move on to the big leagues, with fights at both Strikeforce and Invicta. Amanda struggled with her bigger fights, and when she finally made it to the UFC, she had lost 2 out of her previous 3 fights. Despite being the first Brazilian woman to fight in the promotion, nobody rolled out the red carpet for Nunes at the UFC. Most people expected very little from the Brazilian. She won her first 2 fights in the first round, and Nunes came very close to winning her third. A brilliant Cat Zingano managed to survive Nunes and pulled off an impressive TKO win in the final round. Of course, Nunes was never one to give up easily. Her loss against Zingano was probably the most important moment in her career. Nunes joined the famous American Top Team gym in Florida, where she shared sweat and tears with the likes of Jorge Masvidal, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Dustin Poirier, and Kayla Harrison. Not to mention one of her most successful countrymen, Glover Teixeira, and her future wife, Nina Ansaroff. American Top Team fit Nunes like a glove, and the fire in the Lioness started burning even brighter after her loss. In March 2015, Nunes was reborn in the octagon. She started one of the most impressive runs in the promotion's history. Amanda's mother was a boxer, and she told her to always strike first in order to intimidate her opponent. Nunes has taken this advice very seriously, and she has used this technique to scare the daylights out of her opponents. Instead of being a bold and loud trash talker, Amanda normally does her talking with her fists. She is the hardest hitter in the female ranks of the UFC, and fighters are terrified of her infamous right hand. Her punches quickly became a household name in the UFC, especially after 2 comfortable wins in 2015. But what really put her on the map was her fight against Valentina Shevchenko at UFC 196. The pair put on a crazy brawl, but in the end, Amanda's hand was raised by unanimous decision. That same night, Miesha Tate submitted Holly Holm to become the UFC bantamweight champion. However, her reign was short-lived because the Queen of the Jungle was already hungry for more. Nunes and Tate met 4 months later at UFC 200, a massive event headlined by one of the biggest female fights ever. Nunes was definitely the underdog, but boy was that crowd in for a surprise. Nunes mauled Tate. She delivered a merciless beating on the betting favorite and landed 40 power shots in a single round. That's right, 40. Luckily for Tate, it was all over in a few minutes when Nunes secured a perfect rear naked choke and made the champion tap for her life. That was one of the most devastating title fights in UFC history, and it began the legacy of one of the promotion's greatest champions. And still, it was her next fight that really cemented that legacy. The Brazilian's next bout came against one of the sport's biggest names, Ronda Rousey. Rousey was the UFC's poster child, the promotion's first female superstar, and an absolute crowd favorite. When Rousey lost her title against Holm, the UFC started writing the story of an epic comeback. After a year of hard training and thought, Rousey would rise from the ashes and regain her title. Sadly for Ronda, that's not exactly how it went down. Rousey returned to face an absolute monster, sitting on her old throne. Nunes had taken the sport to a new level, and Rousey still hadn't moved on. Rousey's defeat against Holm was brutal, but it was nothing compared to the rampage unleashed by Nunes. One punch from Nunes left Rousey wide-eyed and terrified. The Brazilian dominated Ronda from the first bell and beat the former champion senseless in 48 seconds. Referee Herb Dean had to run to save Ronda and declare Nunes the winner. After that, Rousey looked like she didn't even know where she was. In less than a minute, Nunes silenced the crowd and ended the career of the UFC's biggest hype train ever. Since then, Amanda has established a reign of absolute terror in women's UFC. After her massive bang in the bantamweight division, Nunes decided to take it up a notch and challenge for the featherweight championship. Of course, this is where many drew the line. Nunes would have to face a bigger, scarier, and undefeated menace: Cris Cyborg. Cyborg was a terrifying prospect, and it seemed like Nunes was quite literally punching above her weight. But once again, people underestimated Amanda. Nunes needed 48 seconds to destroy Rousey, and just 51 seconds to annihilate Cyborg. At 145 pounds, Nunes' fists were more effective than ever, and her fellow Brazilian definitely felt the consequences. Everybody thought Cyborg was undefeatable, but against Nunes, she got dropped. That victory made Nunes the third fighter in the history of the UFC to hold titles in different weight classes at the same time. The only other fighters who have achieved that goal are Conor McGregor, Daniel Cormier, and Henry Cejudo. However, none of them has been able to defend both titles at the same time. That honor belongs only to Nunes. And she secured it in amazing fashion after taking out none other than Holly Holm with a massive head kick at UFC 239. From March 2015 to December 2021, Amanda won 12 consecutive fights in the UFC, 7 of them defending her titles. Jon Jones, Georges St-Pierre, and Khabib Nurmagomedov are often debated to be the greatest of all time on the men's side of the promotion. For the women, there's no debate. Amanda was finally defeated by Juliana Pena at UFC 269. But just a few months later, Nunes avenged her loss and regained her crown. Nobody knows what comes next, but for now, the reign of the Lioness continues. So, from sleeping in gyms to dominating an entire sport, that was why fighters are scared of Amanda Nunes.